The UC Sanction, starring Taking Our Rights Back, Catwoman 2005, and Gypsy Auditor. Written and directed by Mr. Chips.
Attention creative auditors and part-time magicians. While turning thin air into cash might sound fun, attempting to scam the benefit system is not the way to go. It's less Ocean's 11 and more courtroom blues. Remember, honesty pays off, literally. Fraud, however, comes with free bracelets. The handcuff kind. Play it straight, folks.
In the quiet town of Midsummer Flats, there was a curious group of individuals who prided themselves on their self-declared careers as freedom auditors. Armed with smartphones and shaky camera work, they stormed public spaces, libraries, police stations, and even the occasional post office, loudly proclaiming their right to film under the guise of public accountability. But really, everyone knew the truth. It was all for the sweet, sweet dopamine hit of YouTube views and ad revenue that barely bought them a Tesco meal deal. Still, they lived in deluded grandeur, speaking of monetization as though it were a six-figure salary. At the heart of this ragtag crew was Darren, or as he styled himself, the Torbinator. Darren wore sunglasses indoors and had a YouTube channel boasting a modest 278 subscribers. He often claimed to be exposing tyranny, but mostly he was just filming the librarian refusing to tell him where the large print romance novels were. Then there was Catherine, aka Catwoman 2005. Her speciality? Loudly reciting privacy laws incorrectly in shopping centers. Finally, rounding out the team was Danny, aka Gypsy Auditor, who didn't even film. He just held Darren's spare battery pack and nodded menacingly in the background. Unbeknownst to them, their antics had caught the attention of Universal Credit. This particular branch office had a sharp-eyed worker named Carol, who'd been piecing together the group's increasingly bizarre income declarations. Darren had listed digital journalism as his profession, but had only declared £6.32 in YouTube revenue over 6 months. Catherine claimed she was a content creator, but her channel had been demonetized after a particularly ill-advised video titled "Security Guard Fails at Detaining Me." Spoiler, she got detained. Danny didn't even bother. He simply ticked self-employed and listed his earnings as TBD. One chilly November morning, Carol called a special meeting. She'd had enough of their nonsense. Darren and Catherine arrived at the job center, dressed as though they were headed for a court case they were planning to win on principle. Danny had forgotten the meeting entirely and was still in his dressing gown, sipping a can of off-brand energy drink. "Good morning," said Carol with the steely politeness of someone who had already won. "Let's get started." Darren leaned forward.
Before we proceed, I'd like to remind you that this conversation is being recorded for my YouTube channel.
"Absolutely not," Carol replied, pointing to the no recording sign that Darren had somehow missed despite pointing it out in every other public building. He hesitated but reluctantly put his phone down. Catherine piped up.
"You can't actually stop us from filming. This is a public building, funded by our taxes."
Carol cut her off. "You don't pay taxes."
Well,
Darren sputtered.
we're working on that, scaling up the channel and all.
Carol didn't even blink. She slid a spreadsheet across the desk. "Let's review your earnings." The figures were grim. Darren had spent more on petrol driving to his audits than he'd ever made on ad revenue. Catherine's most profitable video, titled "Karen Flips Out Over My Camera," had earned £1.83, which she'd immediately spent on fake eyelashes. Danny had no earnings to speak of, but had once asked a fan in the comments to buy me a coffee, which Carol informed him did not count as taxable income.
We're building a brand,
Darren said defensively.
You don't see returns overnight in this industry.
"This industry," Carol replied, "appears to involve harassing Tesco employees and getting thrown out of libraries. We've reviewed your work thoroughly."
"Wait,"
Catherine interrupted.
"you've been watching our content?"
"Yes," Carol said flatly. "For compliance purposes, it's certainly unique." After 3 hours of grilling, the verdict was delivered. Darren, Catherine, and Danny had all been found in violation of Universal Credit's self-employment rules. They were immediately sanctioned, their benefits reduced to near nothing.
But how are we supposed to survive?
Darren wailed. Carol didn't miss a beat. You could try getting a real job. The trio stormed out, furious but determined to turn their oppression into content. They spent the next 2 weeks creating videos with titles like Government Overreach Exposed and Freedom Fighters Sanctioned by Big Brother. Unfortunately for them, the algorithm wasn't kind. Their videos tanked, and Darren's channel hemorrhaged subscribers after a particularly ill-advised rant about Carol's tyranny. Months later, Darren was spotted working for the council picking up dog poo in fields. Catherine was working as a receptionist, where she wasn't allowed to film anything, and Danny had finally found his calling as a cesspit cleaner. Their YouTube dreams were over, but every now and then Darren would mutter to himself while getting a new poop bag from his pocket.
They'll see. One day, they'll see.
As for Catherine, she got demoted and now cleans the bins in the new receptionist's office. Rumor has it she uses Darren's used poop bags as gloves so not to get dirt on her hands. If only she knew what those bags were used for. Pretty disgusting, hey, ha 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 ha.
No more bullshit. You are either on my side, by my side, or in the fucking way. Choose wisely.